and welcome back to the Citizen channel. I hope you're all staying safe and well, and we have another anatomy of a City goal. Please, if you enjoy this and you're not subscribed, please push that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, keep spreading the word, get this membership subscription rate up. That'd be absolutely fantastic. As I'm recording this, we've recently gone through 2,000. So if you can spread the word, be much appreciated. And if you give us a thumbs up or likes, you make an old City fan very, very happy. Yes, anatomy of a City goal. Yeah, I've got a special one today. There's clues, obviously, on the thumbnail you've watched, etc. And, of course, we score plenty of goals, don't we? Some more important than others. They're all important, aren't they? I mean, obviously, if you score a goal and you're losing 5-0, it doesn't make a lot of difference. But some goals put us on the very edge of glory or get us back in a game that we have to win. Or some goals sort of put us into safety, or perhaps not so much recently, but, safe from relegation, various things. And, of course, some goals win us the ultimate glories, of course. And some won't affect anything. Some will just make you go, wow. So they don't affect a cup run, don't affect a position in the league. You just stand back and are staggered by them. And this is what this feature looks at. And today we're going to go back to 1974. Yeah, a match-winning goal, this one. Very important goal in a Manchester derby, which is always important if you win a Manchester derby, of course. It is more important for me because it was my first ever trip to Old Trafford. I've been to Main Road against United, but this is my first ever scary trip to Old Trafford. I'll tell you that now, and you'll probably know why when you know the goal and what happened with the scenario, if you like. But overall, in the context of the game, it just allowed us to rub a bit of salt into raw wounds as far as United were concerned. So, yeah, we're going to have a look, of course, at the 27th of April, 1974, a goal a goal for City by a United legend. It's not something I often say that. Of course, Denis we're talking about, aren't we, on the 27th of April, 1974. Let's go back to that time. How was City doing themselves? Well, it's a funny old season for City. The chairman, Peter Swells, recently took charge. He hadn't been doing the job for long. He would be there a long, long time, unfortunately. Manager was Tony Buck, but he'd only took over from the 12th of April after Ron Saunders, who Peter Swells had promised would deliver so much for us, had gone. He didn't last long. And we actually had three managers because Johnny Hart actually started the season in charge. There'll be a team picture there with him on it. Obviously, ill health forced him to pack it in. So I'm not sure who the caretaker manager was between Hart and Saunders. It might have been Tony Buck himself. Because obviously he did that job many times, didn't he, over the years? But yeah, so that was three managers. So it wasn't fantastic, but we're okay. We're doing fantastically well. We just lost the League Cup final, which was my first trip to Wembley. That was another depressing episode in this 73-74 season. We were 13th out of 22 in the old First Division. No sponsors then, of course. And we'd played 41 games approaching this game. Now, our average crowd for the season was the seventh highest. Yeah, seventh highest. I was looking at it. I mean, even Birmingham City had a bigger crowd average than us this season. Very odd. We don't sort of think of Birmingham having massive crowds, do we? But they were struggling, certainly below us. But they had a bigger average by a couple of hundred. It was 30,484, which ended up as the seventh highest in the First Division. About Denis himself, well, of course, it was his first season back with us. He'd been back in time, 1960-61, of course, playing for City. But he was released by United, a little bit devastated by that, at the age of 34. So this is the second time we'd had him, and this was his first season back. Of course, Johnny Hart had brought him across. As at this stage, before this United game, he'd made 21 league appearances, 2 as sub. He scored 8 goals, wasn't a bad return. 1 FA Cup match, he scored 2 goals in that. And 4 League Cup games and scored a goal in that. So he scored 11 goals altogether before this game. Of course, he wasn't happy. But he jumped at the chance to join City when United released him. I think it's Tommy Docherty at the time released him. And they say Johnny Hart offered him a role back at City, and he thoroughly enjoyed it up to this point. Anyway, let's talk about the match day. United versus City derby pride up for stake, but more importantly, it was a matter of survival for United. They still had a very outside chance of surviving at this stage, but it was an outside chance. But at least he'd had to get some pride. Tommy Docherty in the programme notes very positive and warning that whatever happens, obviously they'll be back up for it. And the fans were turning out in the numbers as well. You know, the fans got behind him. All credit to them. I don't give United fans much credit, but yeah, the crowds were increasing as things were going from bad to worse for United in the hope that they would get out of it. So this game took place on a Saturday, 27th of April 1974. Attendance on the day was 56,996. And as I said, my very first trip to Old Trafford, about a group of about 10 of us, all teenagers, 13, 14. I think the eldest of us was about 15. I was used to tricky away games by then. I mean, my first away game was Anfield the season before this, so I was well used to going to hard places and trying to watch me back, because that's what it was like, sadly, in those days. But Old Trafford, you know, certainly at my age, at that age, it was a frightening place. It was horrible. It was horrible. I'll use that word. It's not nice now, is it, guys? Let's be honest about it. It's not the nicest place to go. Certainly in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even now it's not. But even worse, then, as you know, if you've been to many. I mean, I've even studied with them at Old Trafford and sat with them at Old Trafford. It's not nice. It's horrible. Probably one of the worst places in English football. Certainly for City fans, anyway. But a group of us all rocked up to the scoreboard end. And as soon as we got in, a City fan rushed up to us and said, "Look, don't go in there, mate. It's all kicking off." And there was just United fans everywhere. We sort of found a corner and sort of set quiet. We didn't wear colours in those days. You didn't wear your colours to Old Trafford, that's for sure. Certainly not kids of our age, anyway. It wasn't worth getting our heads kicked in for that. So the bulk of the City fans appeared to be in the Stretford End paddock, because if you do watch it on the telly, it was a scoreboard, which is usually packed full of City fans, but the segregation was non-existent then. And any City fans in the scoreboard, and like ourselves, were keeping a low profile. So let's go on to the game itself. Yeah, the City team that day got a substitute called Henson. I've looked him up. He actually appeared 14 times in between 71 and 74, but I'll have to have a look at him because I don't know. Do you remember Henson? I don't remember anything about him. But the rest of the team, apart from Denis Law, Corrigan, Barrett, Donaghy, Doyle, Booth, Oakes, Somerville, Bell, Lee and Chewett. So I've heard of all them. And substitute was Henson. As I say, I'll have to find out a little bit more about him. He didn't play often. And United, yes, Stepney, one of the worst keepers ever for a so-called good team. I never rated Stepney even at his peak. Forsyth, Houston, Greenough, Holton, Booker, Morgan, Macari, McElroy, McCalliog, Daly, and their sub was Martin. So what was the state of play? How was it going leading up to this goal? Well, it'd been a tense affair, not just for us in the scoreboard, but it certainly was tense. To talk about nerves, I remember going to away games. I used to yawn a lot. That was one of the things I used to show when I wasn't happy. I used to yawn a lot, and I was certainly yawning a lot at this game, that's for sure. Clear chances were few and far between in the game itself, although I can remember very little about it. Law admitted that, most he and his teammates would have been happy with the draw. It wouldn't have been any good for United, of course, but they would have settled for a draw. But at least United might have had a little bit of pride and hadn't been beat by City. But they did take the game to City, but defensively played very, very well. We held out, and all seemed to be set, really, for a 0-0 draw until, of course, the goal. And we'll talk about the goal. It's on 82 minutes. It began in the City half. If you watch it back, it's a cracking move. Obviously, a lot of space for Colin Bell, though. Doyle won the ball and fed Somerby, who found Belly. He had acres of space, and he just ran up towards the United box. And he took the ball forward and found Lee, who was on the edge of the D, Francis Lee, and then he sort of moved. As he got the ball facing him, he moved to his left or to the right of the box with about 3 or 4 United players chasing him, and they were all drawn to him as he shimmied, and he just managed to screw it inside or pass it into the 6-yard box. Denis Law was actually on his own at the back. I don't know what the United. That's probably why they were getting relegated, because it was so crap at the back. But he had his back to the goal, but the ball found its way to him in the 6-yard box. He had his back to goal, just instinctively as a striker would, just backheeled it. Stepney was flat-footed. There's not a lot he could do about it. As I said, I didn't rate him particularly anyway. And I think Law was just as stunned as everyone else when the ball ended up in the back of the net. And of course, Colin Bell congratulated him, but Gerald Sinstadt, I think, on the commentary, commented on how disappointed or how sad he was for doing this, and it was 1-0. And of course, cue pandemonium. The City fans that were in the Stretford paddock made a lot of noise. We in the scoreboard had actually, ironically, we'd actually left. The tension was building. We were getting a few threats. We'd actually left about a minute before this happened. So we were literally coming out the ground as we heard a massive cheer. We thought United had scored, but obviously there's a hell of a lot of City fans in and around the ground that made the cheer. So obviously we hadn't seen it, and then obviously we only learnt later about the various pitch invasions. Of course, the United fans sought out any City fans he could, and then obviously invaded the pitch, forcing the rest to take the teams off. The teams did actually come back on and attempt to restart the game again, and City obviously accepting just how Denis Law felt, and subbed Denis Law before the game restarted. So the Henson lad came on for Denis Law, but of course there would be another pitch invasion, and the game would have to be abandoned, obviously, and it was decided at not on the day, it was decided at a later time that the result would stand as 1-0 to City. So context and conclusions, yeah, even a victory wouldn't have saved United that day as it panned out. It didn't make. So all this about City sending United down wasn't really true, but it certainly didn't do any help, did it? Put it that way. But of course, results elsewhere meant United got relegated. Even if they'd beat us that day, it wouldn't have made any difference. We personally would finish 14th, which was our lowest position since returning to Division 1 in 1967. Really, the consequences for Denis Law, he never quite recovered his appetite, I don't think, for football after this. Okay, he was getting on. He cited that the next season, he actually turned up and played in a couple of the Texaco Cup games at the start of the season. If you remember, we played a Blackpool away, Sheffield United away. He scored in the Sheffield United away game, 4-2. And he was actually in the team group. There'll be one up there. He was actually in the team picture for the 74-75 season. But he claimed he thought that City forward line, there was not going to be much of a space for him, and he would have to battle for it. And I think after what happened this season with this goal, etc., into United, I just think he'd lost the hunger to play. And I think he played in a couple of the Texaco Cup games, and that was it. We didn't feature again for City, and he just quit. And that was the end of Denis Law, and obviously his second goal at City. Of course, he remained a United legend. They forgive him, which is quite right. Always forgiven. They even got a statue of this ex-City player, of course, at Old Trafford, I believe. I have seen it, of course. And sadly for us, United's stay in Division 2 was very short. They came straight back up, of course. But it was great to send them down, and we enjoyed it. Put it this way, we enjoyed it once we got back on the 222 bus, was it? The 262 bus back to Withington from the top near that old cinema, wasn't it? In Stretford there, near the Arndale Centre, which was going to be built at that stage in 1974. May have been built, I'm not too sure. But once we got back on the bus and then obviously got home, we did enjoy it. But we didn't enjoy the fact of trying to get out of Old Trafford itself and trying to get out of the vicinity of Old Trafford. So we walked right down Chester Road to get the bus back to Withington, and we were quite cheerful, quite celebratory, but that's another story, of course. But just to get out of the place was we were grateful on that day, in all fairness. So yeah, we did get home in one piece, and it was only on the bus home we found out that the game had actually been abandoned. We thought obviously it would have continued and City had won 1-0, but we didn't, if you know what I mean. But there you go. Anyway, that's an anatomy of a City goal. Were you there that day? Were you in the Stretford paddock? Were you in the scoreboard like me? Scoreboard paddock, sorry. And you couldn't, you couldn't. You had to keep your gobs shut. As simple as that. And if you look at the pictures now, obviously, if you look at the United fans, we didn't wear colours, but we stood out like a sore thumb. Teenage lads without scarves round our wrists. I mean, it was obvious, wasn't it? So it was a bit nasty, but. Anyway, let me know your thoughts if you were there that day, or perhaps your dads were there, or whatever. Let me know. Your granddads were there if you're watching this. Let me know any memories you have anyway. And have you met Denis Law? Of course, bit more City-fied these days. I noticed while City were rubbish, he never really bragged about City. It was always United. But now he's become successful. He claims obviously he's got a bit more of affinity to City again. So I'm not going to say I don't have any time for him, but I have noticed that with Denis Law. He was never overly kind about City until City started being successful. But hey, that's a minor thing. We celebrated that day and thank him for giving us some joy anyway at Old Trafford and embarrassing them. That's what it was. It didn't last long, of course. To say they got straight back in the First Division the season after, but that's what it was. So thanks for joining me. Let me know your memories of this City goal from the 27th of April 1974. A goal for City against United by Denis Law that, though not relegating them specifically, was certainly great fun for all of us that was there. Well, eventually anyway, as I said. Let me know your memories. Thanks for watching, guys. We're going to do the rest of the day. Have a great one. Look after yourselves and look after your families. Before we go, all I'm going to say is, come on, City. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.